I recently sat down with my good friend Kieran. Kieran is a very experienced trail runner who recently just came off a contract with a very big, very competitive brand, Solomon. With trail running being such a niche sport, I find it very valuable to have a friend like Kieran. Here is our conversation.
Yeah, my name's Kieran Nay. I'm 24 years old. I live in Gunnison, a grad student at Western. I'm from Colorado Springs originally, but I've lived here for about 5 years now, so it kind of feels like home.
Kieran was very lucky at a young age to stumble across an opportunity so big to work with a company like Solomon.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was completely starstruck at the beginning of it. It was definitely something where it was, since I'd been really, really young, it was like running trails, doing mountain races, and doing it for Solomon was like the dream. And so it was in May of 2021, and I went to like a recruitment camp for them, and I got selected for the team. And it was people who I had followed since I was a kid, and I'm now they're my peers, and we're going on trips together and doing stuff like that. And it was a really amazing experience. It was definitely kind of sort of a, hopefully not once in a lifetime, but definitely felt once in a lifetime. And I think for me, like, I was and still am really grateful for the opportunity and all that ended up providing. There was definitely, I think, an element of I think I pushed myself past what I probably should have with the foot. I mean, my foot hurt the entire time I was sponsored, and that's not necessarily on the company. And I just kind of thought, I just need to solidify my position in here, get into a longer contract, and then I can take the time to prioritize my health. And in hindsight, I'm like, yeah, okay, that was pretty dumb. And when you're on those 1-year contracts and you're a young guy and you're a new guy, and there's a lot of other young new guys, and a bit of it is whoever's willing to go to all the races, put themselves out there, and really go after it. And I know plenty of other runners who have pushed themselves through injuries they probably shouldn't have pushed through, because it was the big race, it was the opportunity, it was the exposure, all of those things. And I do think that there's probably a bit of a change, and that might just be for me as I'm getting older, but kind of recognizing like, oh, like, this isn't worth doing really like permanent damage.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, due to Kieran's foot injury, it left him at a dead end with Solomon and running at the present time. But he's back on his feet and back running and healthy.
I definitely think, like, starting out, I had some performances that I thought were kind of stacking up, but the big kind of asterisk around all of that has always been like the young guy. And year on year, I'm less and less of the young guy, right? Like when I was 19 and being competitive at the Ascent, if I was in 5th place, it didn't really matter because I was 19. Now that I'm getting older, I definitely, this injury has sort of put an obstacle in that, but I definitely feel like it's becoming less of like, I'm not necessarily just like, these people aren't my idols, they're becoming more my peers. And I think the first time I really like noticed that was probably Pikes Peak Marathon in 2021. Finished 7th at that race, ran it in like 4 hours. And on the way up, like, I was running with names, guys like like Adam Peterman and David Sinclair and Darren Thomas, and people who I have looked up to. I mean, Adam Peterman won Western States in a really quick time this year, and we were dogging each other going up Pikes Peak 2 years ago. And that was one of the moments where I was like, oh, like, I can run with really strong athletes and be competitive. And I feel like I've had these like glimmers of like feeling like, oh, like I am in this elite class, and I've never quite managed to stay in it, just with consistency. And I think part of that is being young. But yeah, I mean, it transitioned from like these are all my idols and I'm just this really young guy, to like, I want to be competitive, and I want to be, not just like, oh, you're good for a 20-year-old. Like, I want to be good regardless. And I've definitely feel like that has kind of shifted, especially as I've gotten older. And I'm excited to kind of get back into that scene and see where I'm at, you know, in a year or 2 years, and do it in a way where I prioritize being healthy over being sponsored.
One of Kieran's greatest strengths on the trails is that he'll toss it up with anyone, the best in the world, the best in the country, you name it. And this is how he got his start.
My athlete manager, Steph, who is a wonderful person and has a ton on her plate, and all my, you know, teammates like, you know, Darren and Max King and, you know, Courtney, all these people who are, you know, great, wonderful people. Logan, I know I'm missing a bunch. They were all really supportive, and everyone has sort of, you know, it's part of the game. Like, everyone goes through these injuries, and, you know, I had plantar fasciitis, tore my plantar fascia, and got a stress reaction in my foot, in my sesamoid, possibly a fracture. And the reaction from everyone was very much like, hey, do what you need to do, be healthy, like, you're so young, don't worry about it, and overwhelmingly positive. And I've had a lot of really great mentors on that team, and people where there was a good year there where it really felt like this is a team and everyone knows each other, and we might live in different places, but it's not just people rocking up. We all wear an S on our shirt, and it's like, oh, I kind of know you through social media. Like, we all, like, really got to know each other, and we did trips together, and, you know, stayed in the same houses for a week, and it was really something where I did feel really supported by the people. You know, when things didn't, like, pan out on the other end of that, I also felt supported by those people. I mean, you know, I had a lot of support from, you know, a guy like Andy Wacker. I don't know if you know who that is, but, like, he's a big U.S. mountain running guy, and, you know, he was really supportive when he kind of heard, like, hey, I heard you're not gonna be on the team anymore, and, like, you know, I think that's a mistake, and, you know, don't let this be the thing that kind of stops you from pursuing this, which I really appreciated. Yeah.
It was now time to face the harsh reality. But Kieran says it very well.
There was a level of communication that sort of dropped off between kind of admin and athletes. I get the sense that there was maybe some financial struggle involved, but essentially what I was kind of told is I reached out to my athlete manager, and it was, hey, you know, we've really loved working with you. Things are kind of tight, and so we can't support you the way we supported you last year, but you can be part of our ambassador program, right? And I'd already kind of done the ambassador thing. And for me, you know, I can buy my own shoes. And so if it's something where it's like, you know, you're going to be posting these posts for this amount of time to, you know, get a pair of shoes or whatever, it's like, I want to be an athlete, not an influencer. And there's certainly, especially in trail running, you have these people where it's like, I'm sponsored by whatever. And they don't, like, they maybe have a compelling story. And I'm not saying these people don't deserve it, but they show up to races and they're not particularly competitive. And I never wanted to be that person where it's like, I'm an ambassador, an influencer for this brand, and I'm working social media and doing all this stuff. And so for me, you know, it was kind of like, hey, we can't support you. Here's the influencer guy's email. And I didn't hear anything else. And I kind of had some conversations with that guy. His name's Alex Mensa. He's a really nice dude. But we had some conversations, and I was kind of like, you know, for me, myself, my own goals, like, I feel like it's almost like a step backward to be giving the same things I was giving and sort of not be considered part of the team, not be considered an athlete. And I also get it, right? Like, there are guys like on that team who had really good seasons, and I was not one of them. And I don't, you know, dispute any of that. And I also am not like, well, you know, it's unfair because I deserve this for whatever reason. But I did kind of feel like, oh, like, you know, had I not broken my foot, had I had a productive season, maybe I could have stayed on. But there were a lot of people, you know, like, kind of came on and then came off. And I think that it was definitely, there was a lack of communication there that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And when I first kind of got the email from Steph of like, hey, we're done, which essentially was what it was. I mean, I was really sad because it had been something that had been a high part of the identity for a while. And it was also, you know, this incredible opportunity. Like, I got to go to the Azores Islands in Portugal for like 2 weeks, fully paid to go compete in the Golden Trail Series, representing the U.S. with my good friend Darren, and, you know, the people I met there, and that experience is something that I would have never had otherwise. And, you know, getting to go to Norway this summer and, you know, that experience, the people I met there, all of these things, it's like, these are things I wouldn't have ever done. And it did kind of feel like, oh, you know, this is sort of like an ending of that chapter. And it's something that I feel like is just getting started. And, you know, for me, you know, I did make the decision to walk away and not be involved with the brand as kind of like an influencer. But for me, it was also like, you know, I'm going to kind of go my own way on this. And for me, it's always been about doing the sport for the love of doing the sport, right? So like being out in the mountains and putting together a good race and putting together a big training block, and the time I get to spend with people in the community, those have been the things that have always kind of driven me. And sponsorships are great, they're fantastic, I would love to have another one, but it's not like the primary goal. You know, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm not sponsored, who am I guess I'm not a runner anymore, and I just, you know, fall into a pit or whatever. It was like I still kind of just kept training and doing the same things I've been doing, you know, maybe a little more on the back burner just with grad school and stuff, but definitely like, you know, it was sad, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, this is the end of everything. It was like, well, that's a bummer, but, you know, I guess that is what it is. You know, they can only do what they can do, and I respect that. And I also made the choice that I felt was right for me in that sense. And if something more comes after it, that's great. And if it doesn't, that's also okay.
With new goals and hopes on the horizons, I'm sure that we will see Kieran emerge once again and toss it up with the best in the country and the world. I ended the conversation with letting him just free for all, say whatever he wanted. And as far as a niche sport as trail running goes, I think it encapsulates it perfectly.
My life. I'm happy I did it, and the journey and the process of doing this is where the value is in it. And the races are a cool little way to quantify some of it. It can be like this kind of incandescent moment where you like, aha, like this is what it means, or this is, you know, this is what I can do. But when everything is about the race result, you don't really have a lot of fun. You're anxious the whole time, you're thinking about it the whole time. And so it's like, if you can approach it from like, I'm doing what I want to do, I'm pushing myself, I'm finding progress, I'm finding purpose in this like passion, and I'm able to like orient my life around it somewhat, then if the race goes badly, who cares? Like, it's not who you are. And, you know, I think those people have and I'm not always good at doing that, but those people who I see who can really kind of embrace that, they're able to take the big risks, and they're the ones who, you know, because if they fail, it's like, it's not this like condemnation of who they are or what they do. It's just like, oh, it didn't pan out, and they still go back and do it every single day. And those people are the resilient ones who you see stay in the sport for a really long time. And the good things kind of follow. I think the good things that happen follow being sort of process oriented, and that comes from loving what you're doing, and that comes from not putting too much pressure on yourself and just enjoying it, you know? Yeah. Well, cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah, sweet. That was fun.
Yeah, for sure.
That was a good one.
Good stuff.
We'll have to...
You can edit all 40 minutes of that or whatever.
Yeah. It's 30.